Hello there, everyone, and welcome to Testy Tuesday on this fine Monday evening. Yeah, I have to get an early start tomorrow, so in order to have Testy Tuesday available, I'm getting it done early, Monday evening. Yeah, you know what was so cool? When I was walking outside to come to the barn to record this, I looked up and there was that almost full moon. It was full last night, but with all the clouds and the rain moving in, I never did see it. But, boy, it's out there in all its splendor tonight. The hunter's moon. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful moon and beautiful, cool night as well. But it reminded me of our Old Testament lesson for this coming Sunday. It's from the 32nd chapter of Genesis. It's that story. Well, we'll get to it in a minute. Let me give you the background to the story. Jacob is running for his life from his brother Esau. Why would he have to run for his life from his own brother? Well, it had nothing to do, I suppose, with stealing and tricking him out of his birthright, or stealing and tricking his dad to give him the final blessing before his dad died. Oh, no, that had nothing to do with it, right, folks? Yeah, that tricky, slippery Jacob. Well, he had wanted to make amends with his brother Esau, and so he sent word to him, hey, let's get together and put this all to an end. And Esau said, yeah, sure, see you in a bit. With 400 of his soldiers coming along with him. Yeah, so he was kind of afraid of what was going to happen next. So he sends his wives and all their kids across the river to the other side with all the flocks and all this wealth that he has. He pushes it on the other side, but then he comes back and crosses back across the river to be by himself for the evening. Now, kind of strange. Why would he do that? Is to protect them in case his brother catches up with him? Not really sure. It doesn't tell us that. But what is interesting is what happens. And what happens is Jacob has an encounter, and in that encounter, which we're going to get into in a moment, his name changes. His name changes from Jacob to, and that's our Testy Tuesday question, what does his name change to? I'll give you a couple of answers here, and you pick the right one. Does his name change from Jacob to Jabbok? Does it change from Jacob to Israel? Or does it change from Jacob to Peniel? Yeah, so is it Jabbok, Israel, or Peniel? Well, the correct answer is, I have to say this, all those names I just named all appear in this text. But the correct answer is Israel. It gets changed to Israel. So how's this happen? Well, it's kind of a strange story, but it's also a wonderful story too. It's one in which Jacob gets into a wrestling match. A wrestling match that I almost see it like, the Saturday night wrestling matches that you and I used to sit down and watch. Because you don't do that anymore, do you? No. I mean, just craziness, just wild, and they're beating up on each other, and it's going on all night long. Who is this guy that Jacob's wrestling with anyhow? I mean, you read the text, and it's either a man, or it's an angel, or it's God himself. All those three things are mentioned in here. Maybe Jacob didn't really know who he was wrestling with, but he knows this is some supernatural wrestling meet that he's involved in. And he never gives up. He never quits. And he finally gets this person into such a position that I'm going to get a blessing from you if it's the last thing I do. Oops, what happens? This stranger, angel, God, touches his thigh, and his hip goes out of joint. But Jacob just doesn't stop. He wants that blessing. So finally this stranger asks, well, what's your name? And he gives him his name, Jacob. Now, why would he do that? doesn't this stranger, especially if it's God, doesn't he know his name? Well, sure he does. But he wants to hear it because back in that day, if you knew someone's name, you actually had control over them. There's power in the name. But also, in order to give a blessing, you also had to be able to name the person. So that is how that whole deal comes about. And it's interesting that it's Jacob who really recognizes this person he's been wrestling with as God, because Peniel, one of the incorrect answers, Peniel was what he named the place, the face of God, because I've seen God's face. I've seen his face and I've lived. And how did he get there? By crossing the Jabbok River. He'd gone across it twice, once to take all his flocks and his family and put them on the other side safely down the road while he doubled back. Now it's interesting because Jacob had already had an encounter, so to speak, with God. You know, Jacob's ladder, remember that? Up and down, that dream that he had? And there he was given a promise that his many descendants would be a blessing to the whole world. And this is the same thing. It's kind of reinforced here, only he's given a new name, Israel, which means you've striven with God. Yeah, the God striver. And maybe that's what we are to be. Can you think about that? When we read these stories, what about you and me? How would we fit into it? We need to be those who don't give up, that we strive with every ounce of our being, even if it's with God. It's not unfaithful to strive with God, to question God, to wonder why this is happening and that's happening. Because, Jacob was at the point where he thought he was going to be killed. Oh, there's a lot more to this story than at first meets the eye. Jacob didn't give up. And I have to wonder, maybe this is why this particular Old Testament passage was chosen to go with our gospel lesson coming up, which we're going to talk about later this week. The widow who goes before the unjust judge and demands justice and never gives up. Do we do the same with God? Do we go before God, demand justice, and never give up? Maybe there's a little bit in there that we need to take a hold of and implement in our lives as God's people. God can take it. God basically let this whole wrestling match be a draw, although I think he got the better of Jacob at the end. I'm going to reach out my little pinky finger now and touch your hip. Nope, there it is, out of joint. I win. Nah, it doesn't say that that's what happened. It does say he touched his hip and it went out of joint, but not in that way. But you can almost imagine it might be happening. But you know what? I think the neatest thing is how this whole passage ends, and I'm going to look it up right now. It says this. Okay. And there he blessed him, meaning God blessed Jacob, right? So Jacob called the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved. And here it is. The sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. The sun rose upon him. His struggling in the darkness had come to an end, and now the sun was rising on him. Beautiful way to end a story of persistence in faith, wrestling with God, with all the demons that haunt you, wrestling with God for answers, wrestling with God for a blessing, so that we might continue our journey of faith with him. Well, God's blessings be with you. It's a bit chilly out here in the barn tonight because I think it's supposed to get down into the 30s again, but hey, that's okay. It's fall. Get out there and enjoy the beautiful foliage out there. It is at a wonderful, wonderful place right now. Blessings be with you.